because you have to break through the amnesia, and you have to force the individual to confront the conflict of that experience, which can lead to abreactions, disorientation, confusion, and sometimes actual mental illness. He might be a basket case.
One drug affected me very strong. I simply was floating. I was almost half conscious. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't take air in, couldn't take air out. Almost died. They noticed on TV camera, they run, immediately pulled me out of cell. And next door, it was my shower stall and bathroom facilities. They put me under shower, cold water, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, to bring me.
Lysenko was kept in complete isolation for 3 years. The Americans tried every possible technique to break into his memory, but all of them failed. The CIA was torn apart by his case. Those who believed him were themselves accused of being under Soviet control. "15 years before, Dr. Cameron had set out to free human beings from their past. His experiments ended in a dark world of paranoia. There was no way of telling whether a person's memory was true or false. No one could be trusted.
We had been really chasing a phantom, if you will, an illusion, that the human mind was more capable of manipulation from the outside by outside factors than it is. We found out that the human being is an extremely complex thing. There were no simple solutions. We got trapped a lot of times with complexities and illusions that didn't exist. But you've just got to bear in mind that these were very strange times.
The CIA had pursued the psychological experiments for one simple reason. They had been convinced the Soviets were doing the same thing. But the KGB had long ago given up trying to use psychology. They had found another way of predicting the behavior of human beings.
To my mind, practically, psychology isn't developed enough to make the practical conclusions. When I started to work as an intelligence officer, I was asked by my chief, and do you know what he asked me first? He asked me whether I read Dostoevsky. And in his opinion, you've got to know the psychological problems in the way they've been described by Dostoevsky. He said that Dostoevsky would let me understand people, would let me see what is happening in his head. Dostoevsky would help me to see the reasons for his actions.
Oh, God, Ben.
Do you think the Americans should have read Dostoevsky? The CIA?
They do it. As far as I know, they do it. They studied Dostoevsky.
The CIA stopped all funding of psychological research, and Dr. Cameron turned to study the memory of a simpler organism, the flatworm. But the dream of creating a controllable mind that could be programmed was far from over. It was about to take a strange new twist. Cognitive science came up with a new idea. If it was impossible to make the human mind behave like a machine, the alternative was to make a machine with a mind of its own. Scientists now began to build intelligent machines with memories that could be programmed. They taught them to recognize and to understand the world around them. The scientists were inspired by the same underlying belief that had driven the experiments of the 1950s, that the mind and the computer were identical. But they were going to push this idea much further.
A lot of people thought that the mind was in some respects like a computer. But there were others, they insisted something much more radical, which was that the mind is a computer, and the only good psychological theory is a computer program, because basically there's just a computer in the head. It was a heady idea for them. They had the notion that very soon, using these new computer techniques and ideas, they would be able to simulate the processes on the computer. And when people are that confident, they are good salesmen for their ideas, and a lot of people bought it.
At this very same moment, the Cold War also changed direction. It was no longer fought out by human agents. It became instead a war of machines. Both sides now possessed enough nuclear missiles for what was called mutual assured destruction, or MAD. The fear was that the slightest mistake could lead to all-out war. To those in charge of America's defense, the idea of intelligent machines was extremely attractive. Their memories would be completely controllable. Unlike human beings, they would not make mistakes.
Artificial intelligence emerged at the point at which there was the immediate worry of a war, some kind of a rationally breaking out war, and that maybe this was some way of helping to control the situation. So there was a lot of magic thinking, I think, that was set loose by the concept of artificial intelligence, that we would have a wonderful kind of control, a big brother control kind of thing. And it was always a tempting one. It wasn't quite a mean Orwellian one. It was like the people in Orwell, they thought it would be great. Things would be looked after. And scientists, you have to understand, always go the easy route.
Once again, cognitive science became caught up in the political pressures of the Cold War. The Department of Defense, through its research agency, ARPA, offered to fund the whole of the new discipline of artificial intelligence. In return, the scientists' work would be used to build intelligent weapons. The source of this funding was kept very quiet. The scientists were embarrassed. They didn't want the public to find out what their real job was.
You have to remember that ARPA's funding of artificial intelligence was for military purposes, but many of the people in that community come from liberal intellectual institutions. They particularly are not interested in military objectives. And so ARPA has always been very good at being able to marshal those forces and to trick them or lead them or move them in directions that have significant military benefits. It had an explicit goal of transitioning this technology into the military-industrial complex.
How do you trick these researchers, these scientists?
You lead them in directions that are useful militarily without explicitly asking them to think about the applications. So we'd say to them, let's work on TV image processing. And they would get results that would be applicable to processing of imagery for military purposes.
So, pitch. Ready. Execute.
During the 1970s, a completely new type of weapon was developed in America. Intelligent missiles with memories that could be programmed. The most famous was the cruise missile, which had a picture of its target stored in its memory. These weapons were a direct product of the science of artificial intelligence. They fundamentally altered the balance of power in the Cold War. In return, artificial intelligence became a powerful science. The idea that human beings and computers were identical came to dominate not just scientific thinking, but popular culture too.
I'd like to grab inside your head for a minute and haul it over here and down here for a minute, where I've got some friends gathered at something called the Cyber.
Breathlessly enthusiastic television programs were made. They portrayed the artificial intelligence scientists as heroic figures.
People often ask if there will ever be machines that think. Well, we ourselves are machines that think by using great computers in our brains. And someday we will know enough to build machines that do such things and more.